Hey folks, this is Abel James, and thanks so much for joining us on the show. Do you ever feel like you're losing your edge? Today we're here with my friend James Swanwick, creator of Alcohol-Free Lifestyle, a movement guiding high achievers like you to sidestep the sauce. In this episode, we're exploring James's journey from rock bottom, hungover in the hallowed halls of IHOP, where mediocrity reigns supreme and dreams go to drown in corn syrup and regret, to 15 years alcohol-free and counting. Whether you're an entrepreneur grinding to reach the next level, an athlete looking for that extra edge, or just someone who knows deep down that something has to change, this episode is going to light you up. Before we get there, make sure that you subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. And if you'd like to stay up to date, please sign up for my newsletter at abeljames.com. That's abeljames.com, or my Substack at abeljames.substack.com. All right, on today's episode with James, you're about to hear the shocking hidden costs of socially acceptable drinking, why the dubious dogma of just one drink so often leads to self-destruction, the compounding benefits of booze-free living for your brain and body, how to wittily fend off well-meaning drink pushers, and much, much more. Let's go hang out with James. Welcome back, folks. James Swanwick is an Australian-American entrepreneur, speaker, and former SportsCenter anchor on ESPN. He's the author of Clear and creator of Alcohol-Free Lifestyle, which helps successful high achievers change their relationship to alcohol. Thanks so much for joining us, James.
Thank you for having me here, Abel, I should say. I was like, Abel, I got my Australian accent thick here. And I've been in Australia. I've been in Australia for a couple of weeks and my accent's gone to hell. I'm sorry about that.
Isn't that amazing? Hey, so I'm trying to think back of your moment of truth, but I think I read in your book that it was in 2010 in Austin, Texas, of all places, where you were in an IHOP and had a moment that I'll let you describe.
Yeah, I grew up in
We've
Australia.
all had a moment in IHOP, I assume.
Yeah, yes. I grew up in Australia and I was a socially acceptable drinker. And I drank, 2 or 3 drinks most nights of the week. On weekends, I would drink heavier. And I did that for almost 20 years. And then in 2010, as you referenced, I was in Austin, Texas. I was at the South by Southwest Festival that year. I had 2 Bombay Sapphire gin and tonics at a festival party on a Friday night. I went back to my hotel about 15 minutes outside of downtown Austin, went to sleep. And when I woke up in the morning, I just felt blah. And by blah, I mean I could taste the gin in my mouth from the night before. I was overweight. I was weathered. I had puffy skin. I was irritable. I was envious of other people. I looked in the mirror and I was like, ugh. And next door to this hotel I was staying at was an IHOP. So I walked over to this IHOP and I sat down in the booth and suddenly it dawned on me, what the hell am I doing in an IHOP? And I was looking around and there were some very unhealthy looking people and they were eating all you can eat pancakes. And I looked out the window and I was like, oh, James, it's time to take a break from alcohol. This is like rock bottom for you. Now, I didn't wake up in a ditch. I didn't get arrested. I didn't get a DUI. But for me, going to an IHOP hungover and was kind of average and mediocre. That was kind of my rock bottom. And so that was when I committed to take what I thought would have been 30 days off alcohol. It's now been 15 years and counting.
Wow. Man, congrats. What a powerful thing. Although it reminds me, it's not quite as powerful of a story, but it does remind me of the last time I ever went to Denny's. And that was kind of a similar hungover experience it was at a music conference actually in LA. And after I ate that grand sandwich and considered how bad I felt and considered pulling the trigger, I'm like, this is the last time I'm ever going to eat at a Denny's. And I think having standards for yourself and how you feel doesn't just apply to one aspect of your life, nor should it. It should, cross from food to drink and anything else that might be getting in the way. And I think if we're honest about it, our society, our conditioning, our culture lead us to mediocrity. I mean, mediocrity is extraordinarily profitable on the other end of it, right? So having those standards for yourself and being honest about those moments where you're like, wait a minute, am I just like stewing in a sea of mediocrity right now? Is this my life? Is this really what's happening? Um, Good on you for taking that approach in that moment and then continuing on to help other people change their perspective. And one of the things that you bring up, and I think it's a gentle way of saying this, which isn't something that always comes off so gently, is you give people permission to re-examine the relationship with alcohol. And I think that's just such a wonderful way to frame it.
Yeah, thank you. And that mediocrity you were talking about, I know a lot of your listeners would consider themselves high performers. Okay. We've got entrepreneurs, executives, attorneys, physicians, people who are looking for an edge, people who are probably health conscious, but also know that their drinking probably is holding them back in many areas. Now, to be clear, not an alcoholic, not someone like I referenced before, waking up in a ditch or getting a DUI or getting arrested, but someone who's been a socially acceptable drinker for many years. And that drift, Napoleon Hill actually talks about it in that book, Outwitting the Devil. He says the worst thing that we can experience is the drift. And the drift is just allowing mediocrity to seep into our life. It's just drifting through life like a river, just drifting down. And I always say alcohol is like death by 1,000 cuts. You don't really notice its negative consequences, let's say nightly, or maybe even weekly. But we certainly notice it over several months, several years, and in many cases, decades, because just a little bit of irritability this week leads into a lot of irritability over very, very many weeks and then months and then years. And dissatisfaction in our marriage or not being present with our kids when we're in that drift can certainly increase. And then over years and then decades, that can lead to a divorce. That can lead to your kids not wanting to spend time with you. That can lead to you've put on 25, 30 pounds and you didn't even notice it. That can lead to higher blood pressure than what you ordinarily had. And so that drift is a very, very dangerous thing. And so I guess I want to, in our conversation here, really invite your listener to explore their relationship with alcohol. I'm not here to sell you on quitting forever if you don't want to. I'm not here to say that alcohol is the devil. I'm here to just gently maybe invite you to re-examine your relationship with alcohol and just question, is that seemingly innocent glass of wine each night really supporting me, or could it be compromising my quality of life?
And I think a lot of us as well have had this false sense of security because of that, whatever it was, health advice, magazines, the government saying that a small amount of red wine every night is beneficial for resveratrol and other antioxidants and polyphenols and all the rest of that. We've seen more recently government entities coming out and saying no, alcohol in any form is directly a carcinogen. We can't really argue about this anymore. And so I think that false sense of security that we might have had for a while now is a good opportunity once again to re-examine, is this a good ritual to have? Because to your point, it seems quite innocuous, like one glass of wine a night. But when you do the math, as you do in your book, you know, one drink a night turns into 365 drinks every single year. You add that up, you're at 1,000 drinks pretty quick. And the cost of that we can get into later, but the math is real and hard to argue with.
Yes. And that's what I'm really trying to impress upon people in my book, Clear, which is one seemingly innocent drink a night really that healthy? How is it actually affecting you? And to speak to those claims about a glass of wine being good for your heart, those claims have been debunked so many times now over the years. But still, I know because I have clients who come to me and they're still clinging on to hope. Are you sure it's not good for you? Are you sure it doesn't help your heart? And I say to them, why are you clinging on to this thing? Like, why are we as a society worshiping at the altar of alcohol in the first place? I describe alcohol as attractively packaged poison, because that's all it is. It's poison put in a very attractive bottle. And then we have these things that are referenced in the book called smiling assassins. And smiling assassins are our friends or family members or the waiter or waitress who are smiling as they offer us a drink. Now, of course, people are trying to be nice and pleasant. Abel, I would suggest if you were having a dinner party at your home, you would want to be a great host, and you would go up to the guests and say, "Can I get you a drink? Would you like a wine? Would you like a beer?" And you're smiling as you offer them this poison. And of course, you're well intentioned, but nevertheless, you're a smiling assassin in that moment because you're inviting people to drink something which causes cancer, destroys our sleep, creates stress, creates anxiety, creates irritability, leads to higher blood pressure, leads to all of these things. And yet the ritual, to borrow your term, is that it's just normal. It's part of bonding, it's part of relationships, it's creates romance, it creates connection. And we've been living this way for decades. Until now. Until now. There is a tidal wave of movement where people are now waking up to the consequences of alcohol and trying a different ritual or different rituals.
Definitely. I'm curious about your perspective, James, on that change because it's happened. You've been at this work for a while, and it's also been going on for a few years now. That now, especially the wave of the younger generation who are very anti-alcohol, is so much larger than it ever has been in recent history that it's really something to behold. What do you think is going on there exactly?
Well, Generation Z have got exposure to much more education than we did in previous years, just through social media and through the proliferation of knowledge and information. So now they're aware of the consequences of it. They're now more health conscious. I mean, certainly they're now more focused on their screens, which is not a great thing, I would submit, but they are increasingly health conscious, so much more so than my generation. I grew up, I was born in 1975. I wasn't health conscious nearly as much as that most recent generation is. So also, they're seeing the consequences now of their parents and their grandparents who've been drinking for many, many years. And let me tell you, it's not great. I have um, an 80-year-old mother, and she's married to a lovely man whose name is Peter, and he's 83. He's got dementia. I caught up with my best friend in the whole world just a couple nights ago back here in my hometown of Brisbane, Australia, where I am right now, to play golf with him. And he told me the sad news that his mother has dementia. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And I grew up with her. You know, she was like a second mother to me. I am seeing dementia everywhere I go now of people of that generation. And when I ask questions about what their lifestyle habits were, almost always consistent, socially acceptable drinker. Certainly, my mother's husband, Peter, was I wouldn't say a big drinker. I would say he was a drinker. Like he would have a couple of beers a night and a glass of wine. That's three. Now, for some people, that would get you drunk and falling off a chair. But for him, he built up so much tolerance over the years that it was normalized. Very, very unhealthy. I'm surprised he even got to 83. So I think now also people are relaxing into the idea that not drinking alcohol is actually okay. Whereas before, if you didn't drink alcohol, the initial reaction might be, "Oh, is Abel an alcoholic? Is James an alcoholic? Oh, why aren't you drinking?" And there was this stigma around it. Whereas now, in part, I hope because of the work I've been doing for the last 10 years as an organization, and many other people in this movement, we've been trying to create this idea that not drinking is a superpower. Not drinking is the gift. Not drinking is cool, if you want to break it down to kind of like a sexy kind of slogan. Um, but that wasn't the case in previous generations. If you didn't drink, you were the weird one. In fact, alcohol was, and in many ways still is, the only drug where you have to justify not consuming it.
Right.
Whereas today, the new generation is like, yeah, I'm alcohol free. Yeah, hey, you want to meet up and go for a run in the morning? You want to go for a hike? Should we go for a smoothie? Hey, have you seen this cool podcast by Abel James? He's talking about a whole lot of health stuff. You know what I mean? Like, that's the new sexy. That's kind of like the new cool.
Yeah. Isn't that incredible? It's such an opportunity because I think it's easy to get disenchanted with the way that a lot of things are going, but there are great things happening at the same time. And uh, and also one thing that you do with your work is you use language a little bit differently than some of the other programs that go about all of this. And so, what's your take, and what's the importance of using more benefit driven language when you're talking about these issues?
Mm. So traditional stop drinking modalities will use verbiage like sober, sobriety, recovery. In AA, you must surrender to a higher power and do the 12 steps. I hate all of that language. I was going to say I dislike that language and that I find it ineffective, but I hate that
Yeah,
language.
let her loose. Let's go.
Also, this language of I'm an alcoholic. Bullshit. Excuse my language. The problem with that is that we're stuck in an identity. Oh, I'm an alcoholic. I'm this, I'm that. Well, now that's very, very tough to be able to get out of that identity because then you go through the world describing yourself as something. I am this. And then everything in your life then proves that you are that very thing.
Right. Whether you drink or not, oddly.
Exactly. Exactly. So someone said to you, as an example, that maybe your mother or father said to you when you were a little kid, you're not smart. And so you go through life maybe growing up going, I'm not smart. And you see the world that way. And everything that you do reinforces that belief. So when we're walking around saying, I'm an alcoholic, we have no room to grow. There's no opportunity there. It's just, I'm stuck in this belief. I can't move. I'm an alcoholic. And that's very, very tough. That's a tough way to live, I would submit. So I don't like those terms, sober, sobriety, recovery. I cannot stand AA's, you must surrender to a higher power. You must declare, my name's James and I'm an alcoholic. Same reason, right? You're stuck in an identity. And saying I'm powerless over this disease, give me a break. You're not powerless, you're powerful. And so what we do in our organization, um, my organization's called Alcohol Free Lifestyle, and we have a flagship 90-day stop drinking process. It's called Project 90, and it's based in neuroscience. The University of Washington did a scientific study on this process in 2023, and it showed a 98% reduction in drinking from the study participants. And part of the reason why I would submit it was so successful was because we use verbiage like alcohol free. I get to be alcohol free. I get to drink soda water ice and a piece of lime. We don't use words like I'm sober, I'm practicing sobriety, I'm powerless. We're choosing something. We get to experience something. And so that empowering positive language can get us to the results of loving living an alcohol free lifestyle, as opposed to being sober or in recovery or practicing sobriety, which feels very dark and heavy and like, I can't do this. I need to stop. I have to quit. And of course, when you are saying that you're sober or you're in recovery and that you need to quit and you have to stop, you feel like you're a prisoner and you feel like you're experiencing deprivation. Like under normal circumstances, you would drink, but you can't because you're an alcoholic or you have to be sober. And of course, all prisoners want to break out of prison, which is why then being quote unquote sober feels hard. It feels like you're having to white knuckle it. Whereas I would suggest over this way, I get to be alcohol free. I'm living an alcohol free lifestyle. I'm focusing on my sleep. I'm focusing on conscious communication. I love getting morning sunlight. I love understanding food and nutrition, listening to great podcasts like Abel James's podcast. And this is very empowering. This is positive, and this is focused on what we will do as opposed to what we're trying to avoid over here.
Yeah, future focused as opposed to sins of the past.
Yes.
And when you look at what alcohol actually does to us, there are a lot of words thrown around. Some of them hit harder than others, but one that I'd love for you to talk more about is just anxiety, because this is certainly something that I've noticed because, well, thankfully, my wife Allison, raised Mormon, really didn't touch alcohol until her 20s, and it was really me who introduced her to it, and early in the relationship. And she never really took to it that much anyway, and has this whole gear is how we like to think of it, where it's shut off. And I have that gear as well. I was totally straight edge basically until I went to college. And during the times that I really have something important to me in my past where I wanted to go after it, I would just go into that different gear and shut the alcohol off, because it's hard to deny that it does all sorts of things. But the anxiety is one that I noticed, where even if it had been drinks a few nights before, that lingering feeling that you think might be your personality actually is due to something that you imbibed and haven't totally recovered from, days or even weeks before that. So maybe you can talk about the less obvious aspects of a hangover or alcohol, like anxiety, that kind of creeps in there, as you mentioned before.
Well, they've shown that alcohol stays in the system for between 7 and 10 days. In fact, they've also done a study where they can take a strand of hair, put it under a microscope, and they can tell whether you drank alcohol a week earlier or not. That's fascinating. So when we drink toxins, because make no mistake, alcohol is just a bunch of toxins, it stays in our system. Yes, the liver does a great, efficient job of getting most of those toxins out within the first 24 hours, but there are still toxins that are lingering in your body. The other thing is, most people will drink at nighttime. Yes, like most people drink close to bedtime. You're actually better off drinking for breakfast than you are anywhere close to bedtime, because at least in that scenario, your body has 16 hours to rid itself of most of the toxins that you've just ingested. Whereas when we're drinking at nighttime, we're essentially clocking the body in for a night's work at a time when the body doesn't want to work. The body wants to rest. And so a poor night's sleep, as you would know, Abel, can linger. The consequences of that can linger for 3, 4, 5 days. And people mistakenly believe that drinking alcohol helps them sleep. The truth is that it might indeed help them to fall asleep. It might help them to pass out. But the quality of that sleep is going to be so severely compromised that the consequences are dire. And the consequences aren't just feeling irritable one morning, foggy one morning, distracted one morning, fighting with your wife or husband, or not being present with your kids one morning. Those effects linger day after day after day. And so don't be so sure that drinking a couple of seemingly innocent drinks at nighttime helps you with your sleep and is therefore beneficial, and therefore you're going to wake up with a, great performing heart, because there was that study in the 80s that said drinking is great for the heart. Instead, look at it as, I'm drinking poison. The effects of this poison are going to be in my system for another week. That's going to compromise how I relate to my wife or to my husband. That's going to affect how I engage with my son or my daughter. That's going to affect how I perform in my business. That's going to affect the gains I'm trying to make in the gym. That's going to affect my blood pressure, et cetera, et cetera. So rethink the drink is the headline that I would invite your listeners to really ponder here.
Yeah, as technology has gotten better over the years, it's become more and more obvious to me how bad alcohol really is, even in small amounts. And so back in the day, gosh, this was almost 15 years ago, when I was doing a lot of marathon running, I ran this little loop that was measured, and so I would time myself doing it. And so, just for fun, I decided to, um, because I wasn't drinking alcohol at the same time that I was doing marathons, I should say, because I didn't want to stress my body, right? So while I was training, I wanted to see what would happen if I had a glass of red wine or not, and ran the same. And so I did this a number of times, and each time I did it, I was running the same distance, but for me, being relatively competitive back then, I was going 10 to 15 seconds slower per mile with a higher level of effort, because I wrote down, like, how hard did it feel to run it this time? And my effort went up out of 10. I can't remember. It was like 2 points out of 10, basically. My time got slower from one glass of wine the night before. And then moving forward to once the, Aura Ring came out, and you could start to look at your heart rate data, especially over time as it's measured, your HRV and all of that. My beats per minute go up significantly. And that is one thing. When you see your at least for me, when I looked at what it did to my heart specifically, I'm like, oh no, not my heart. Like that's the scariest thing, that it could affect so obviously.
Yeah. There's a gentleman called Evan Melcher, and he's got a chapter in the book. Actually, I'm just showing you now, Abel, a photo of him. That's his before and after. And um, Evan is a financial advisor in Atlanta, Georgia. He wore an Aura ring as a drinker, and he tracked his heart rate variability. He tracked the number of heartbeats he had, and then he joined our 90-day stop drinking process, Project 90, and he tracked his he tracked his heart rate with the Aura ring. He estimates that he saved 5 million heartbeats over the course of 1 year that he didn't drink alcohol. 5 million heartbeats in 1 year is what he saved from stopping drinking alcohol. Isn't that extraordinary?
So basically, for the listeners out there who aren't familiar with what this looks like, you can see the amount of beats that your heart is taking over the course of the day and over the course of the night. And so your resting heartbeat is generally at a certain number. But let's say that uh, mine was at 40, not drinking. My heart rate will go up to 55 or 45 or 50 if I had been drinking, especially if I tied one on, stayed up a little bit too late. And then that also extends to the following day, where my heart rate will remain elevated over the baseline for a few days after that. And it's interestingly, different types of alcohol did seem to have a different effect, but they were all bad. There were none that were good. The only thing that that I found that was kind of intriguing in all of that measuring that wasn't necessarily directly bad was that sometimes blood sugar wouldn't spike quite so high during a meal if there was a bit of wine or a little bit of beer with it. Um, but even that is something where the data shouldn't be completely trusted, because there are a lot more variables than that, just that going on. And I would imagine the downsides of having the alcohol would outweigh whatever the modest benefit of a smaller spike might look like.
Yeah. A lot of folks who come to us have a pattern of health challenges: high blood pressure, for example, triglycerides, cholesterol, unwanted body weight. Then they stop drinking alcohol, and all of those markers improve dramatically. We referenced the Aura ring tracking the heartbeats. Blood pressure can drop and has dropped dramatically. I've seen people lose 25 pounds over 90 days. I've seen people whose triglycerides have reduced. Cholesterol drops. And people might say, how does the cholesterol drop from not drinking? Well, there's a couple things, including the fact that when you're not drinking, you tend to eat better. Because when we're drinking, we tend to reach for a dessert or for more carbohydrates, because the sugar in alcohol makes us crave more food. So think about it. If you're at a bar or a restaurant and you sit down at the beginning of the night and you're trying to lose weight and you have the best intentions of not having dessert, and you're just going to have one glass of wine, right? And you're trying to watch your weight. Well, once you have that glass of wine, your body is now like, ooh, that tasted pretty good. Actually, now I'm hungrier, right? Now I want to eat more food. And so then when the smiling assassin comes over at the end of the meal and says, can I get you a dessert? Here's the dessert menu. What would you like? You go, oh, all right, okay. I'll have the creme de brulee. All right, I'll have the ice cream and the chocolate cookie or whatever it is. And then you tend to eat that stuff, right? And I remember I was at this pub or bar up on Sunset Boulevard when I was a drinker. It was called the Happy Ending Bar. It was on the corner of Sunset and Highland. And it was a very interesting name for a classy place. But I remember as a drinker, I went up there and I was ordering a burger and fries. And I said, oh, I'm not going to eat the fries, but it came with the burger and the fries. And because by the time I'd put the order in, I'd already smashed a Budweiser and I was onto a rum and Coke. When the fries came, it was impossible for me to decline those fries. They were put in front of me. I'm going to eat those fries. So, of course, what happens then? You put on extra weight because you're eating more calories. Your cholesterol levels go up. All of your markers go up. You're consuming fried food, fried oils. So it makes sense that when you stop drinking, you're less prone to eating crap. Not to mention you're no longer drinking those dead calories. Now your body loses unwanted body weight. It starts to run more efficiently. You sleep better. Now your blood pressure drops. Your triglycerides go backwards. You start to look better. So you have some more confidence. Now you have less stress and anxiety. Now you're less likely to crave something like a drink. And then you go, well, you know what? Maybe I'll lift a little heavier in the gym, or maybe I'll actually go for a longer walk. Or you know what? Now I've got this aura ring. Maybe I'll go for 10,000 steps a day. And these little 1% improvements cumulatively add up to, oh, suddenly I'm not stressed and anxious anymore. Suddenly I'm feeling pretty good. And suddenly my wife says she's proud of me, and my husband says I look good naked, and my kids and I are playing and having a great time, or my kids are starting to phone me when before they didn't phone me, and I'm just experiencing a much higher quality of life.
Hmm. It's interesting. It brings something to mind where I've coached a number of people over the years, and with many of them, I encourage them to give up alcohol because it's going to make the whole process a lot easier. But of course, many people, just want to focus on the nutrition side or the fitness side or whatever that is, and continue to drink. But the ones who don't give up drinking, or really start moderating it to some degree with a pretty strong cutoff, um, the ones who don't uh, do that and continue to drink, they always they sometimes they still get great results, but they're like, that was hard, like this is hard. They would continuously say. And the ones who gave up alcohol at the same time often said, like, I'd check in with them and be like, hey, how are you doing? They're just like, I'm doing great. This feels great. I wasn't expecting it to feel so great. Like, I have so much energy. Yeah, yeah. But I noticed that was a pattern that would come up, where the people who actually quit both the horrible food and the drink at the same time had a heck of a lot of an easier time giving up the bad food forever.
Yeah. I remember when I sat in that IHOP all the way back in 2010, and I made that decision for what I thought would be 30 days stopping drinking alcohol. I remember that was the first domino that fell, right? And that, imagine a big long line of dominoes, and the first domino is stop drinking. And the first domino then led to me eating better, or at least stopping eating as much crappy food like fries and Carl's Jr. burgers and all that kind of stuff. And that would hit over the next domino. And then I remember I was living in Hollywood, California at the time. I was like, maybe I'll join that LA Fitness up on Hollywood Boulevard, because I hadn't been lifting weights or doing anything really at that point. I was like, okay. So then I started working out, and that hit that. And then I joined a spinning class, which was in that gym. And I went, oh, okay, I'll just go and do that 2 days a week and kind of ride the cycle. And then all of a sudden, I was like, oh, I should help more people. I'm not very charitable. And then I joined Arnold Schwarzenegger's After School All Stars charity, and I started raising money for that charity. And then I got invited to his home at his annual party for all the people who raised considerable money for his charity. And I was like, okay, that's cool. So now I'm getting a new friend group. This is pretty cool. And then that hit over the next domino, and on and on and on it goes, on and on and on it went, rather. So it's just one decision, like one domino, all of a sudden results in all of the dominoes falling that have been holding us back in life. And what opens up is a beautiful cascade of new experiences, better sleep, more connection, attracting a great romantic partner, re engaging with a romantic partner, being more charitable, feeling good, just going through life feeling fulfilled. Now, there's a difference between pleasure and fulfillment. And I would submit most people who are drinking are probably chasing pleasure, right? So there's a spike of like, oh, I got pleasure. Then there's a crash. Oh, I've got pleasure. Then there's a crash. Oh, I got pleasure. Then there's a crash, kind of like a heartbeat on a monitor. And I was like that. I was like that for years, years and years and years. But since I've stopped drinking alcohol and those dominoes have fallen, what I'm experiencing now is what I describe as fulfillment. And it's like this kind of measured compound interest, where it's not so noticeable like the heartbeats of the pleasure. each day. But it's like, oh, I feel good from sleeping well. Oh, I feel good from that morning walk. Oh, I feel good from having a loving conversation with my wife. Oh, I feel good from reconnecting with Abel on this podcast and being able to, put my message out to the world and support his listeners. Oh, I feel good that the sun's shining. And that fulfillment just seeps in through your life over years and then hopefully decades, many more decades for me to come. That's a beautiful way to experience life. So if we can just knock over that first domino of alcohol, I promise you, all of life, most of life gets to be just glorious.
Yeah, because you don't have that edge, that extra like skip in your step when you've even been drinking a little bit the night before, or even in general. But I find that there are different levels of this too, where there's something that happens 2 weeks out after you haven't had a drink, where you really start to feel quite a bit better. The first few days may be hard or whatever for certain people, but having coached people through this and experienced it myself, there's magic, like you say, that starts to happen where instead of your baseline being, oh my God, I got to do this. All right. That guy, man. You're like, oh, I like feel good right now. Like I have there's something in me that feels good. Like it's an unusual feeling for people who haven't been in there for a while, but it is completely real. And then on top of that, your body is just running a lot better. Everything is working and detoxing. You're not burdening it. Like God knows, looking around what we're exposed to in our food, our water, our environment, our bodies have enough work to do as far as that goes. So we don't need to layer more on top. But another thing that's really scary is, as you mentioned before, is the amount of dementia that we're seeing. And alcohol causes brain damage as well as degeneration. And so there are a lot of people who, even younger, who start to notice that their memory isn't quite right. It's not everything is firing exactly as it should. They're not remembering things that they know they would otherwise remember. That could be a cause of concern, right? Because some of these issues, like especially involving the brain and the memory, start small and they can start quite young, actually. But if you start to enact better behaviors when you're young, you can prevent major injury down the road. The graph that you show in your book, I think, is extremely compelling.
Yeah, sadly, most people don't fear how they're going to be many decades in the future. If we did, then we wouldn't do the things that we do, right? But the reality is exactly as you just put out, which is our habits today will show up in our health and quality of life in 2, 3 decades' time. No question. And it doesn't matter how compelling an argument you and I make here, Abel, people who are maybe in their 30s or 40s, maybe early 50s, are not still going to be compelled enough, probably most people, to take action today for fear of how they'll be when they're 80. It's just human nature, right? Some of us will, but most of us will not. So my challenge here is to try to convince people to get short-term benefits and then hope that it sticks so much that it becomes a lifestyle that they just carry on and they get those beautiful consequences of life in their 80s and hopefully 90s. In fact, I saw something the other day from, is it Peter Diamandis? Who's the longevity expert? Is that his name? Yeah, Peter Diamandis. I think it was.
Or Peter Attia, maybe.
Possibly. I'm not sure. I'd have to double check it. But he said that if we can stay alive another 10 years, like we can all just not die for the next 10 years, the way that medical science is progressing and with AI, we should be able to extend our life by an additional 30. That's what he said, right? Here's the thing, the quality of our life is what I'm more interested in. Because I mean, I talking to my parents who were both 80 this last week, because I'm back visiting them here in Australia temporarily. My mum says, "Oh, I don't want to live to 100 and 105, James." I'm like, "Well, why not?" She goes, "Oh, I don't want to be old and like can't move and I've got dementia and I'm in at home." And I said, "Okay, well, what about if you could live to 105 or 110 or 120 and you could move and you had all of your cognitive faculties and you had even more energy than what you've got now and therefore you got to spend another 20, 30 years. Would you be open to that?" She goes, Oh, yeah, absolutely. So you see, it's the quality of life that people want. It's not so much the duration, it's the quality.
Yes.
And so I would just submit, like however old you are listening to Abel and I right now, even if you can't look that far into the future, look into the next 90 days, 6 months, or a year. Think of today's date. Fast forward to today's date in 1 year from now. How could your life be different by removing this poison consistently? And I can tell you this anecdotally because folks come through our programs and they stay with us for a year, 2 years, 3 years, whatever it is, and go alcohol free. Like compound interest, life just gets better and better and better and better the longer you remain alcohol free. But if I can just get you to commit to at least 90 consecutive days now, you can experience those short term benefits. Then I got a shot of having embedded this in your life as a lifestyle, and now you desire to get to a year alcohol free. You desire to get to 5 years alcohol free. It's not being sober and white knuckling it, and it's hard. It's like you get to be alcohol free. It's amazing, and that's really my work, I guess, my mission, Abel.
What are some of the other more immediate benefits that uh, you encourage people to notice or that you've noticed coaching people throughout this?
Energy, clarity, focus, great night's sleep, less irritability, less envy, a feeling of calm, a feeling of peace, a feeling of fulfillment, just an increased positivity for the future. A lot of people are walking around life going, this is hopeless, or I'm worried about the future. Those kind of feelings and thoughts start to dissipate when you remove that toxin. There's some of the short term effects. Some people have referenced just for whatever reason their family members have said, "Oh, look good," and I'm like, "Well, yeah, that's because the toxins have been removed from your skin. Our body's largest organ is our skin, and when you stop drinking alcohol, your skin returns to the way that nature intended your skin to be. But when we're drinking, those toxins show up with more visible crow's feet and bags under the eyes. In fact, they did a study out of the UK in the early 2000s, and they showed a bunch of photographs of random drinkers and non-drinkers to a group of study participants. And they said, choose out who you find more attractive out of this group of photographs. And overwhelmingly, the study participants chose the non-drinkers as being more handsome or more attractive than those who were drinkers. That's fascinating. So just a warning, you do get better looking when you stop drinking alcohol.
Hey, that's a fair warning.
Let me just speak to the financial benefits as well, if I may, because I know that you've got some business owners or executives or investors or realtors or attorneys or physicians listening to this. If you are drinking, most people would submit that they feel like they're performing at a 6, 5, 7 out of 10 compared to what they know their potential is, right? Certainly when I have prospective clients talk to us, I say, how do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10? And it usually is like either somewhere between a 4 and a 7. Okay. Now let's just do some math here for those who are logic and mathematically based. All right. They need logical mathematical proof. If you have a business that's doing $1 million a year in revenue and you feel like you are operating at a 6 out of 10 because you're foggy, distracted, irritable, not sleeping great, you don't make strategic decisions, you don't hire someone quickly enough, you don't fire someone quickly enough, you're just kind of like phoning it in. 6 out of 10, you make $1 million. Got it. If you stopped drinking and you went alcohol free, and now you experienced a great night's sleep, clarity, focus, energy. Now you make a couple of additional sales calls. You make a better strategic decision. You hire that person. You fire that person. You're more engaged. You've got clearer thinking in your business. When I ask people that question, they say, oh, I'd be operating at about an 8 or a 9 out of 10 in the business. And I go, okay, great. Now, over the course of a year, if you were operating at an 8 or a 9 out of 10 in your business, how much revenue do you think you'd generate? And then they tell me. And most of the time they say, oh, probably 1.5 million, maybe 2 million. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. Let's take the most conservative number that you said there, $500,000 more than what you're making right now. Therefore, your drinking habits are costing you $500,000 a year. And then I pause and I watch and they listen, and the penny drops, and they go, oh. So really, that drink or two a night that they've been thinking is innocent and helps them relax, helps them sleep, it's no big deal, is actually costing them $500,000 a year in that scenario. That is mind boggling. Now, here's the next thing. And sorry to go on, but I think it's worth
No,
laboring on
please
this
do.
point. Yeah. I'm going to pull out my phone here. I'm doing the math here, right? $500,000, okay, divided by 365 days of the year, which means every day you choose to drink, it's costing your business $1,369.86. Now, if we take it that most people are drinking, let's say, 2 drinks a night, 3 drinks, but let's just use the example of 2. We divide the $1,369 a day divided by 2 drinks a day. Each drink you choose to consume is costing you $684.93. Now, that is dumb tax in my view. That is a dumb tax that you are paying in your business. And if you're a business owner, you're running around going, how do I save taxes this year? How do I make more money? How do I keep costs down? How do I do this? How do I make this more efficient? Oh, we're in the red. We need to get in the black. Or who do I hire? Meanwhile, you're draining $684.93 with every drink that you consume. And that's just at a 2 drink a night basis, right? It's insanity. So I do outline that calculator in the book. You can go into that chapter and it will walk you through how to do that math in your own business to see what the true financial cost of your drinking is. And just to put a kind of like a bookend on this part of the conversation, Abel, divorce is pretty damn expensive too. And if you're drinking and that's leading to a divorce, that's probably going to cost you hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions of dollars. Is drinking alcohol and the consequences that come from that really worth getting a divorce?
Yeesh. And then, I mean, you also have to account, and this is pretty simple math too. Whatever it costs you, like per drink, your drink of choice every night, and let's say it's 1, then you put a few zeros after that when you do the math of that over time, and that adds up to thousands and thousands of dollars, easy, no problem, for every person who's choosing to do this, right? Like a man who's drinking 750 drinks a year, whether it's at home or out, $5 or $10 or whatever, we're talking 5 to 10 grand probably, and that might be on the lower end, depending on what city or country you live in.
Listen, people saying, oh, I don't spend that much money on alcohol. It's only like, 10 grand a year and I put it through the business. I'm like, that's what you're spending on alcohol. But here's what you're not generating because of your
Yes.
drinking. Millions of dollars.
Yes.
You're flying all over the country trying to do deals with people, trying to convince people to work in your company. You're trying to hire people. You're trying to cut costs. And yet you're choosing to go through life with a ball and chain around your ankle, which is costing you millions of dollars over time. It's like, guys, we got to wake up here. And don't be so sure that this is only for business owners. For those who are listening who are executives or in, jobs and got careers, if you're operating a 6 or a 7 out of 10, you might get fired for poor performance, right? Or certainly if you don't get fired, maybe you don't get a promotion as quickly as you might ordinarily if you had been alcohol free, right? People are going to notice if you jump from a 7 out of 10 performance to a 9 out of 10 performance overnight. They're going to notice, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, we're going to compensate you more. Maybe you've got compensation built into your job. So that could mean an additional 20, 30 grand a year. Maybe you get a promotion. That could mean another 50 grand a year. There's all kinds of benefits if you're in a career like a job from being alcohol free and enjoying the clarity and the focus and the greater performance as a result of that.
Definitely. I mean, you look at musicians who drink or not drink or drink very, very moderately compared to ones who drink like a typical musician who's just slamming booze and practically paid in booze. I mean, you're very much encouraged to be the life of the party, and much of that involves tequila shots. But if you compare the musicianship and the actual performance that you see from these players, the ones who choose to keep going in that direction. Maybe the beginning of the gig sounds pretty good. The first few songs might be all right, but once all those tequila shots kick in and people are nice and loose and get a little bit too slobbered up, um, it's hard to argue that the music gets better at a certain point, right? The running joke is if we don't sound good, drink a little bit more, we'll sound better. That's kind of what what a lot of people's approach is to this whole thing. But you are a worse musician. You're certainly going to be a worse musician the next day. And so the people who I've coached and been around, and some of the highest level players who I've seen, being in the music scene for a long, long time, the people who are continuing to tour the world and sell these incredible albums that are rocking across the world for many decades to come, like these people cleaned it up a long time ago. The rock star that most people think exists is a myth. The ones who are just like on drugs all the time, slamming booze, all those ones died when they were 27. Like that's not something that continues to happen. It catches up with you. So it's important that people are honest with themselves about this, because it doesn't just apply to music, but the arts as well. I know you've interacted with a lot of people who are actors who are very strict about this fact that they do not drink alcohol in heaven for years and will never go back. And that is their advantage in many ways, because once you're that guy, then you rise above the sea of people who are just a little bit frazzled and anxious. And at the 6 or 7 out of 10, there aren't quite so many people who are up at the 9 out of 10 level. So yeah, you get noticed.
Mm. Yeah, there's some famous people that people might recognize. Bradley Cooper, the actor, has been alcohol free now for many years. In fact, in another life, I was a Hollywood correspondent. When I was living in Hollywood, I actually interviewed movie stars. And I remember I interviewed Bradley Cooper when he was promoting the film The Hangover. And I remember I was a drinker at that point. I think it was 2007 or 2008, somewhere around there. It was a couple of years before I stopped drinking. And I was interviewing him at the SLS Hotel in Beverly Hills. And he told me that he didn't drink. And I thought to myself, doesn't drink? God, I don't want to hang out with this guy. Yeah. That was
What
my
a
that was my
square.
way of seeing, yeah, that was my way of seeing the world. Well, fast forward to today. I think he's done okay, Bradley Cooper. I think he's done all right as a non-drinker, don't you think? Um, Chris Martin as well, from Coldplay. Brad Pitt. I mean, look, I don't know what happened, but depending on whether you believe media reports or not, apparently he was drunk on a plane with his then wife Angelina Jolie and grabbed her and grabbed his son, or something happened. And that led to Angelina Jolie effectively divorcing him. And he's cleaned himself up in recent years and is now alcohol free, and seems to have excelled in his life subsequently since then. Natalie Portman is an actress. Interestingly, President Donald Trump claims that he's never touched alcohol. He had a brother whose name I think was Frank. I'm not sure. I have to double check that. But he was what they described as an alcoholic, was a big drinker. And his brother told Donald, don't drink, don't smoke, don't do drugs. And apparently Donald Trump listened and claims that he's never had a glass of alcohol. And that's very interesting. Larry Ellison, billionaire, multi-billionaire, owner of Oracle. And I think Warren Buffett rarely, if ever, touches alcohol now, most successful investor in the world. Shana Twain, Ronaldo, the footballer. I mean, look, all of these people know that alcohol affects their performance, and so they steer clear of it. And it's that way of life seems to have done okay for them.
Yeah. And it's hard to deny. I mean, if once again, to go back to the beginning of this conversation, gently re-examining and looking at your perspective of how alcohol shows up in your life is something that shouldn't be threatening, and we should all invite ourselves to do, not just right now, but like forever, all the time, because there are different stages that you go through and different points in your life, and if now isn't the time, then maybe tomorrow or a few weeks or a few months from now, because once you really experience the difference in how you feel on a day-to-day basis, like you say, that compounds over time, it's hard to hit the bottle too hard. I mean, I still drink on special occasions from time to time, but also go on long streaks of just being like, you know what, nah, let's and right now I think I'm gonna go on a long one of those too, because it just you inspire me, James, and it's really important timing for people out there, I think, because we have less room for error in many ways with what we have going against us in terms of hyper palatable foods, low food quality, the pollution, lack of movement and exercise, like so many problems. This doesn't need to be another one of them. And there are so many wonderful alcohol alternatives now as well that are out there. But before we go, I would love for you to quickly just talk about what can people do to get around the cultural implications of turning down a drink that's offered, by one of those smiling assassins who do it in good faith for the most part.
When you're offered a drink, whether you're at a party or a work event or a restaurant, it doesn't matter so much what you say, it matters more how you say it. So, most people in a social situation say that they feel awkward declining a drink because of that fear that people will be going, oh, look, Abel must be an alcoholic or he's got a drinking problem. Oh, what do you mean you're not drinking? Why aren't you drinking? But it's my birthday, but it's our anniversary, but it's the party. Come on, but it's the NBA playoffs. What are you talking about? Of course we're going to drink. And they feel awkward because of the scrutiny that that invites. But the scrutiny only comes and the judgment only comes if your body language is displaying that, oh, yeah, I wish I could drink, but I can't. Oh, no, 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 sorry. Yeah, sorry, I can't drink. Yeah, I don't want to be a killjoy. When you're displaying that body language, when you're apologetic for not drinking, what are you saying to yourself and to the people who are inviting you to drink? You're saying, that drinking equals fun and pleasure, and not drinking equals pain and deprivation and being dull and boring and being a killjoy or being rude. So instead, what I invite my clients to do and what I invite the readers of my book to do is go into any social event and own confidently with a smile and a smirk that you are alcohol free. And just, oh, no, thanks. I'm good. Actually, can I grab soda water? Do you have any alcohol free drinks? What have you got? And then when the scrutiny comes, which it won't, but if the mild curiosity comes, oh, what do you mean you're not drinking? You just go, yeah, you know what? I haven't drunk in like 6 months. It feels great. But I tell you what, I'll go shot for shot with you tonight. You drink that vodka and I'll shoot this soda water. And you just have a little lighthearted giggle about it, right? You maybe even make fun of yourself. You put on this smirk, this sly grin. And what you do in that scenario is that you convey through your energy, through your body language, through your mannerisms, through your tonality, that you are confident in choosing an alcohol free lifestyle. You're not apologetic. Oh, yeah, sorry, geez, sorry, I wish I could. You're not displaying that it's painful not to drink. Rather, you're displaying that you're happy being alcohol free, right? They've done studies of persuasion and influence. And what they've shown is that persuading or influencing a fellow human being only is 7% what you say, 93% how you say it. I'll say it again. Persuading someone is only 7% what you say and 93% how you say it. So, for example, you, the listener, have been listening to Abel and I have this conversation. You can hear I slow down, I emphasize words, I kind of speak with empathy and care, or I'm like talking like aggressively, like, you need to quit alcohol, damn it. Right? Like you can hear how my tonality is changing. And if you're watching, the video of this, you can see how my body mannerisms are changing. That's persuasion, right? Body language, tonality. Now, when we go into a social situation, oh, gee, sorry, no, I wish I could drink. No. Oh, should I drink? Should I not? No, 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 no. We're telling ourselves, we're reinforcing this ridiculous notion that not drinking equals pain and deprivation and drinking equals fun and joy and release. And of course, the people that we're with believe that now because they're seeing you in pain. So now they're believing it. Come on, alcohol equals fun and good times and bonding, and not drinking equals you're a killjoy, you're ruining the celebration. So my invitation is go into those situations shoulders back, chest forward, and just own the fact that you're alcohol free. Have a giggle about it. Be lighthearted about it. Don't get on your high horse and start pontificating and trying to make people quit drinking as well. Just own the fact that you're alcohol free, and that social awkwardness will subside. I promise you.
I love it. James, what is the best place for people to find your work and your new book, Clear?
alcoholfreelifestyle.com/clear will take you to a page where you can get the book on Amazon, or you can get the audio version. It's also available on Amazon and online wherever books are sold. And alcoholfreelifestyle.com, you'll find some other stuff there as well. I appreciate you inviting me on the show and asking me where folks can grab the book, Abel. Thank you.
Of course. No, brilliant. Thank you so much, James, for the work you do in the world and all the people you're affecting positively. The ripples just keep on going.
Thank you, Abel. Appreciate that, mate.
Hey, Abel here one more time. And if you believe in our mission to create a world where health is the norm, not sickness, here are a few things you can do to help keep this show coming your way. Click like, subscribe, and leave a quick review wherever you listen to or watch your podcasts. You can also subscribe to my new Substack channel for an ad-free version of this show in video and audio. That's at abeljames.substack.com. You can also find me on Twitter or X, YouTube, as well as Fountain FM, where you can leave a little crypto in the tip jar. And if you can think of someone you care about who might learn from or enjoy this show, please take a quick moment to share it with them. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.